Hey everyone, Fresh here. Today I wanted to talk about this Ara-Kara that I did earlier this week. This was a +8 key. This was just a pug key. I just picked all of these up in LFG. There's myself as the protection warrior. There's two marksman hunters, a balanced druid, and a holy paladin for the healer. Uh, I don't do anything fancy in this run. This is just a pretty straightforward, they like to just call it kind of a W route. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm pulling to this first tailoring buff over on the left here. You can see the dead Nerubian right there. I do have the tailoring profession, so I always pick this up to have for the first boss. I think it makes the first boss a little bit easier just to have that 12-second stun on it. So going into this pull, just popping kind of standard offensive cooldowns. Ravager, Avatar, Last Stand, Spear, all of that stuff. So I won't have Ravager or Spear right off the bat going into the mini boss pull, but I should still have Avatar and Demo, which is certainly fine. So here I'm kind of rounding everything up. It's always good to use Spell Reflect whenever you're picking casters up like that. And then one other general tip I like to do whenever you're doing a bigger pull like this and you're trying to kind of pull things together, I'll use Shield Wall right off the bat while I'm kind of grouping everything up. And the reason is because once you're going, like once you're in position and you're, doing your rotation and you've got like Demoralizing Shout and Avatar going and you're smashing Shield Slam and Thunderclap, you're generating a ton of rage, you have Shield Block up, you're very tanky at that point. But when you're initially picking everything up, it can be really dangerous because you don't have things rotating like that. And that's kind of the most dangerous part of the pull a lot of the times is the initial one. So on big pulls like that, I like to use Shield Wall just to make it as safe as possible. So cleared that first mini boss pretty easily. And then now we're clearing the second platform. So this will kind of get broken up into two pulls a little bit. This platform's pretty big and there are a lot of mobs that do a reasonable amount of damage compared to the last pull. So you can break this up into like two pulls or just kind of like one pull, like kind of chaining together. As you can see here, that Pat just kind of walked into the hunter, so I just picked it up and then grabbed that lone crawler as well, just to kind of pull it into the pull. Here I'm just kind of kiting a little bit. You don't really want to get hit by those toxic ruptures, and I don't want to burn like a bunch of, CC on it when I don't have to. I can just like kind of do some mini kiting here. So we're just kind of finishing these off here. I do make, I think, kind of a small mistake kind of closer to the end of this pull here. I kind of like walk slowly towards the range, like to the hunter and everything. And I should have been probably going around on the outside so they don't have to reposition themselves, especially for marksman hunters because they do have like a cast timer and everything. So just a small little like note on like kind of a mistake on my movement there. With this mini boss, I don't like to pull the crawlers into this mini boss, so I kind of like to just clear the platform and then go into the mini boss. And the reason is twofold. One is those crawlers do that AoE toxic rupture. While this group is all ranged, so it wouldn't be as bad if those were on the ground, it's still pretty annoying, even just for you as the tank. The other thing this mini boss does is it does do kind of a like an AoE that hits everyone in the group. So there's like a decent amount of group damage going out as well. So I like to just clear this platform and then go into the mini boss by itself, kill the mini boss, and then we're going to go to the next mini boss. This group you can pull in here. Here you want to hold your Spell Reflect because you want to use Spell Reflect on this third mini boss for that first poison bolt. It's just a nice little bit of extra damage, saves a kick too, so people don't have to worry about it. And then I also just pop Spell Block pretty much off the pull here, just so that way I'm, any poison bolts that go through, I block them, and it's not a big deal if they don't get interrupted, when I've got block up and everything. So we're just clearing this off before we go to the first boss. We'll clear out this Ascension. One note with Ascension, I notice this in a lot in lower keys. People get really, I think, like kind of nervous or excited, and they like will immediately start using CC when there's only like 3 Ascension ads up. You want to wait for Xalatath to finish because you want to get all 10 ads if you can with the CC. So this first boss on Avanox, the key as a tank is pretty simple. You just need to keep her as far from the eggs as you can. I think there's like 2 locations they'll spawn. They'll either spawn in the spot they are in this run, or they'll spawn like over in the other corner. Since they were on kind of the south side, I can just tank the boss exactly where she is, no need to move, so I can just charge in and just start tanking her, and then just let DPS finish them off. If they're over on the right, so if they're over on the west side, you do want to pull her back into like the southeast corner to give your DPS enough room. And then when Gossamer Onslaught goes out, there's no reason to move, and in fact I think I probably moved a little bit too much when I was doing that. You can just do small little movements to kind of stack the webs a little bit tighter. Fortunately, DPS was really good, so me kind of being a little bit sloppy with the movement, doesn't really punish us or hurt us or anything like that. So, but yeah, again, you just kind of need to be aware of where the eggs are. So I knew they were kind of on the other side there, so I'm fine like just tanking the boss where they're at, especially with like how good the DPS is in this group and everything. So now we have Onslaught coming out again. Here I kind of do a little bit better job. Paladin and I kind of run into each other a little bit. The Hunter does end up eating one, but it's not a big deal. And then the third set of eggs do pop right next to her, so now I need to actually move. I think I do actually make a bad positioning decision here. I should have actually positioned her like over by the other webs, in theory, because if we got like a fourth set of eggs, we would want like, again, webs kind of stacked a little bit tighter. But fortunately, the DPS was good enough in this group that we, I think, pretty much only had to deal with three sets of eggs. So we'll pretty much just have one more Onslaught that we just have to deal with here. So as long as nobody stands in a swirly when it pops, then we'll just finish the boss off and then do the Ascension and go into the next trash pack. I think if you can kill Avanox in your group, and especially if it's a pretty smooth kill, you're generally in a really good spot, because the second and third bosses are pretty easy in here. They're not really too difficult. I think Avanox is kind of the only real like sort of DPS check, and in fact the third boss I've even soloed on like a +6. I was doing a +6 with not as strong players, and they all died really early to the third boss, and so I literally just soloed it from I think like 60 or 70%. So that boss is very easy to do. Again, we're doing kind of a big pull here. This is 3 pulls. As you can see, I use Shield Wall as I'm picking the ads up, and then once I have them all grouped up, I'm going into my rotation, pressing all my buttons, and everyone else's too. One other thing I'm going to note in this is I think in this group we actually had 0 revolting volleys go off, which is awesome, especially because we do end up getting a pack a little bit later down this path here that has 3 web mages in it, and we stopped every single cast. So that's one thing I kind of wanted to talk about. When you start getting into harder mythic pluses, honestly something that will make it just easier overall is just using your crowd control and using your interrupts as much as you can. Just be aware of what your crowd control does. As you can see here, the Paladin just immediately hammers that stag shell, resets the timer on the heroic leap. The rest of the group is also positioning pretty well. There's that Bloodguard that's slowly walking down the path, and you can see on the far right that Hunter is repositioning towards the edge to make sure they don't pull it, because they know I don't want to pull it. So. And this is the big triple web mage pack. I think this is a pat plus a static pack. So this pull is probably a little bit dangerous on harder keys with like fortified. But one thing I wanted to point out is that everyone is just firing off their CC. I go in, I use an interrupt right off the bat. I use Stormbolt to stop a cast. I use Fear to stop a cast. I am holding Shockwave specifically as kind of like a last measure. Also if Ascension popped at that point, but clear out that pack, no problem. We're moving into this pack here. This is a double stag shell pack. Druid does a great job of knocking that in. And I'm waiting for this cast to go a little bit lower before I shockwave, because you want to reset the timer as close to the end of the cast. You don't want to reset it when there's like 8 seconds left, because it'll just start casting again and you don't buy yourself a lot of time. So here I'm grabbing this Bloodguard pack for count. I actually don't know if I need to grab this. I'm going to reevaluate my route a little bit in this dungeon, because I think it might be possible to skip this and maybe kill some of those like those ads, that go into the house before the third boss on the sides. That might give enough count. I'll have to kind of double check Mythic Dungeon Tools to see if that's the place. But basically here we're pretty much good. We just have the one web mage. I think the Boomkin used a solar flare to stop the cast when it was at ranged, and then when we pulled it in, I made sure that the revolting volley doesn't go off there. And then here, this pack, I've heard some suggestions that you can like bring this pack into the boss. I don't think that's necessary. The timer seems pretty forgiving in this place, and I think it's just safer just to kill this anyways, because the Blood Guards have that 50% damage reduction, so it's not like your cleave damage is going to be super great on the boss anyway, so I think it's just a little bit safer and a little bit easier just to kill this pack where it's at. So once we finish this Blood Guard off, the healer's doing great on mana, so I'm just going straight in. We're just going to go right into a Noob Zaket. This boss is pretty easy as well. Honestly, the only thing you really have to worry about, other than moving when he's doing the swarm ability, is just making sure to keep the ads a little bit under control and killing them as well when they come up. So anytime they come up, I do like to make sure I interrupt them right away and everything. So the other hunter does kind of die there. I think just made a mistake. It's not a big deal. It happens. These higher mythic pluses can be pretty punishing, especially for like DPS players. So now we're going into the swarm phase. If you don't know yet, as the tank, just stand to the right of the white circle. What this will do is, if you notice, the circle is always kind of rotating slightly left. So it baits the frontals away from the circle, so it gives everybody in your group plenty of room to move around inside the circle. I think I'm a little bit moving, maybe a little bit too much, but I think I did fine there on the movement in terms of positioning. And that's pretty much the fight, so this will just kind of be a rinse and repeat. While that's going on, I did want to mention one particular talent choice I made. I do know a lot of guides have been recommending using the Storm Shield hero talent in the Mountain Thane tree, and that's the talent that gives like a small little magic absorb to your intervene. So if you intervene to like a friendly player, you'll end up saving, or you'll end up preventing some magic damage to them. I don't actually really like that talent, and the reason is because the number's pretty small. It's like triple your armor value. I think my armor is currently like 140,000. So realistically, you're looking at like less than 500k for the absorb, which is, it's basically like 10% of people's health in these dungeons. So I actually really like the triple Stormbolt talent. So I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's on that same node. So if you pick that talent, it makes your Stormbolt hit 3 targets instead of 1. It does increase the cooldown by 10 seconds. Part of the reason I like that is it's just good for general crowd control. Sometimes you can hit more than one mob and have more than one stop if like your shockwave's on cooldown. The other thing that it's good at is it's good at picking off kind of like far ascended mobs. So like sometimes what you'll see is like my shockwave, I'll shockwave like a group of ascended mobs and I'll get like 7 of them, and the other 2 will just be out of range, or 3, and I can just chuck like my Stormbolt at them and just finish the rest of the mob. So it's really nice as a warrior to be able to like completely manage the affix entirely by yourself using that talent. So I would recommend the Stormbolt talent, but if you want to use the Intervene talent and get some play out of that, you can. So here we've got 16 minutes left. I'm just playing it nice and slow, casual. There's no reason for me to do any sort of crazy pulls or anything like that. I do want to grab these winged carriers since they are close. Whenever these are close, just grab them as quick as you can. And you kind of want to look in this room as much as you can when you're coming into it, just to have a good grasp of where the winged things are. So one reason I want to reevaluate kind of maybe pulling these drones is these drones end up getting pulled on the sides here a lot anyways, just because when you have the Overseer and it's doing the webs or other things, people kind of shift around, up on the stairs. They end up getting body pulled anyways. So it's kind of I want to reevaluate and see just if it's worth doing these drones maybe over that other Blood Guard pack in the street before the second boss. The only thing that the drones do is they do put this like really bad slow on the tank. As you can see, I'm moving at like 10% movement speed. I think the Paladin probably already used Freedom, so I'd have to just wait for the buff to fall off. And then here we just get the big ad with all of the winged carriers. It's not that big of a deal. I think if you have one set of winged carriers with this this hauler ad, you know, they'll kind of leap around and things like that. If you want to be like Superman Maxi, you could try and maybe hold like spear for this, so that way you can like spear and like keep the carriers pinned down for a couple seconds. But as you can see, the damage they do is like not that big a deal. So we're just kind of finishing off the hauler here. And then on this next set of double overseers, I make kind of a mistake because I end up typing out. I like tell them like, hey, I'm gonna interrupt this mark. I should have just interrupted the mark without typing anything because I end up missing the cast. So one venom volley does go off. My mistake. I should just kick it and just, you know, not worry about it. It may have been good maybe for me at the start to say, hey, I'm just going to kick star whenever it's in a pack rather than having to do it here. But yeah, so we're kind of going into this pull with the overseers. Again, pretty simple pull as long as you kick. But yeah, as you can see, I'm trying to type. I'm like, I'll kick start, and then I don't kick it. So my mistake. Should have just you know, fired it off and just kicked it. And that's another thing in these. Don't be afraid to just like send interrupts. But another thing you can do is you can kind of be a little bit strategic sometimes. Like in pugs, I'll actually, you know, be a little bit strategic. Like in Mrs. Turn of Scythe, when the Staghorns, for example, do their simulate resistance, I will actually not do that first kick because a lot of times, you know, pugs especially, they'll just snap kick it. They'll be like, oh, I have to kick that, and they kick it. So if I kick, my kick gets wasted. So what I'll do is I'll wait, have the cast go off, or somebody kick the first cast, and then that way I can kick the channeled cast that comes right after. But in general, if you're unsure, it's just generally just better to send your kick than it is to like hold it and try and be like so strategic about it that you end up not using it. It's better for it to be on, you know, cooldown than not used at all, particularly in pug environments. Once you start getting into like kind of coordinated group play, you know, you want to be more cognizant of, you know, your kick assignments and what you're supposed to be kicking. And then yeah, we're on the last boss. Honestly, this boss, it's very easy. All it comes down to is like whether everyone in the group can manage all of the things that are kind of going on. It looks like there's a lot of things going on screen, but realistically, this boss is like pretty simple and straightforward. You know, fortunately, as a warrior, I kind of get to like cheese the cosmic singularity mechanic a little bit with heroic leap. So all I really have to worry about is just don't get hit by corrupting webs, and then just kind of like be aware of my position and where the black pools are. One thing I will start doing is kind of planning and preparing, like, okay, where am I leaping to? Is there a puddle in my path? So I notice, okay, up at the front of the room, there's no puddles in my path. I'm just going to leap up there. Charging back in, I do hit that puddle that's right next to the boss, but that's not a big deal because I just immediately interrupt the ad that got on me, and then that just freed me right away. So, but yeah, if everyone in your group executes this fight correctly, it's a very easy fight. There's like nothing dangerous that's going on at all. As you can see, like nobody's health bar really moves. There's the poison dot, so that's like the only real like kind of damage check that the healer has. As you can see, people's health bars are kind of moving down a little bit. And you know, I kind of like try to make sure to use like some cooldowns on those. And by that I mean like ignore pain. I think I did shield wall one of them. So, but overall, this was a really clean run. Felt really good to get this high of a key done. Got me a +10 key that I will be running, you know, later this week. Probably won't time it, but I can at least get like, you know, a really good item for my chest. But thanks everyone for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you do want to see kind of some more like Mythic Plus tips and tricks and just guides and things like that, particularly when it pertains to Protection Warrior.